Never had the dream to be a
Okay.
realtor. That wasn't on the bingo card. Had been a teacher for about 5 years. Interestingly, real estate is very similar to education. Believe it or not, your students are just older. They're usually adults, thank goodness, when they buy homes, but it really is education. So I take that to heart.
What should buyers watch for when they're hunting for a new home?
So the interesting part is
Welcome, everybody, to Building Pensacola. I have with me a special guest, Ashley Murray. Ashley, how you doing?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm excited about having you on the show. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, and where you work.
All right. So I'm Ashley Murray. I grew up here in Pensacola, born and raised. Moved away as a military spouse for about 20 years, came back to town about 10 years ago, decided to get into real estate after teaching, and I work at Levin Rinke Realty, and I'm on the Kathy Batterton team.
So tell me a little bit about what made you want to be a realtor. Like, why that?
Never had the dream to be a
Okay.
realtor. That wasn't on the bingo card. Had been a teacher for about 5 years.
Okay.
And my neighbor was my realtor. And so I saw her stressed out a lot. So you think, yeah, let's be stressed out. No, but I saw her working a lot. And then as we were friends, because she was my neighbor, I saw that she might need help. And so that seems interesting. So then we just went to dinner one night, talked through things, and I jumped on board. I'm a lifelong learner, so I thought I could try this. And
Yeah.
so I went and got my license and said, let's go. And more as a trial to say,
Yeah.
I'll dabble in it. Dabbling became 9 years, and it's been really great. I love it.
That's
love it.
awesome because I was a teacher as well. I taught for 7 years and enjoyed it, but glad to be in different areas now and everything. So what did you teach?
Elementary.
Elementary. Okay.
So interestingly, real estate is very similar to education. Believe it or not, your students are just older.
Yeah.
They're usually adults, thank goodness, when they buy homes. But it really is education. So I take that to heart with my clients for sure, of what they need, what they might see coming or not see coming, and being able to educate them in the process. So it really is, it goes really smoothly with education.
So having that hand-in-hand relationship, have you felt like, oh, this is just an extension of what I was doing and
Absolutely.
you're still satisfied? You don't feel like,
Oh, I love it.
yeah.
Absolutely love it. Never a day, 2 days are the same. You're constantly learning, which is what I love about it. Never bored. So sometimes I wish I was bored a little bit, but I'm never bored.
So since you've been a realtor, what are some of the top 3 challenges that you faced within your first year?
So interestingly, the learning process, the learning curve
Yeah.
is probably the biggest, because the joke in the industry is that you get your license and you sit for the exam and it's a 50% fail rate. Everybody wants, it's so hard. All it does is teach you law. So how to stay out of jail and stay out of trouble, I think.
Yeah, that's a good thing to know.
But the test does the exam, the licensing doesn't get you hands-on experience.
I feel like that's
So
teaching.
It is.
It's just like
absolutely is.
teaching.
And so, like a room full of kids or, selling a property that's a big deal to a buyer or a seller, it's really just the hands-on learning. So for me, I didn't go at it as a solo agent. I joined a team right
Yeah.
away. And so with that, it's drinking from a fire hose. So
Yeah.
I got all the experience really quickly,
Yeah.
more than most solo agents do. So it was just OJT, truly, which was really great.
So talking about being on a team, like you've been on a team the whole time. And how has that helped you navigate potentially jumping past issues that other realtors have faced? You're
Absolutely.
learning all their mistakes. Oh, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
right.
This is how you get there faster. How has that been for you?
For me, as the baby of my family, I was able to have not experiential learning. So I was able to watch and see what my siblings did and learn from that. So I kind of take the same thought process in a team because being on a team, you get all of their experience, all their wins, all their losses. We talk all the time about that in meetings and huddles. We call them huddles.
Yep.
And so we're able to get that experience without actually having to have the experience.
Yeah.
And so I think with a team, that's really the gold that you mine being on a team versus having to do it all yourself. And so the studies show, Tom Ferry is a big national real estate coach that we coach under his program. And the thing is, teams are the wave of the future because not everyone can be an expert in every part of the business. And so we may not be the marketing expert myself, but I've got a marketing expert on my team. I may not have the profit and loss experience running the spreadsheets, but I've got somebody on my team.
Yeah.
So I'm the salesperson. I'm the one that loves on clients and makes it happen, but I don't have to do a lot of the other pieces. So to me, a team is where it's at.
Well, and you think about it, a lot of times when you are, you're growing up, it's like, oh, well, you're not good at this, you're not good at this. So then you start pouring so much time into that when you could be shoring up those weaknesses with people around you and then accelerating your like strong points and like being able to shine, because most of the time people they're better than 10,000 others at one thing. And being able to go deep instead of wide is really important.
And I think that is what makes someone very successful is that they get their ego out of the way, that they don't have to be great at everything.
Yes.
So they surround themselves with great people. And for me, that goes beyond just the team because we have to have business partnerships too, because there are a lot of hands in a transaction. So, it's not just me handling everything. I have to deal with other people in the community, other business folks like title and lenders and appraisers and all of those people. So to be able to make those relationships and have that communication is just the way it has to be because you can't do all that yourself.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about networking. I know you started with your neighbor being on her team and everything. How did you develop your network along the time that you've been a realtor? Because I feel like networking, we hear, oh, you need to build your network and all of this.
Everybody says, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? What are the actionable steps? Could you go a little bit into that?
It's a great word, right?
Yeah, it's fuzzy and it's
you sit by yourself and you go, well, how do I do that?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of ways to plug in. So of course, our team had other people on it that were maybe more experienced than me at the time. Other folks in our brokerage, that's a huge piece of the pie of how to connect. For me, it was groups. Groups that I went to. You can be part of the Rotary. I was on a board for a nonprofit. So plugging in the community that way, but also just asking the question because I train new agents in part of our brokerage and I say, call a lender, go to lunch. Ask all the questions. Call a home inspector. See what they do. Ask if you can tag along just to see what the process is before you have to do it. Before you're in the trenches and you have to answer to somebody. You have the experience and just make sure that you know what's going on, what a buyer or a seller can expect from that. And so plugging in, but community groups, the chamber, the networking of the monthly meetings or the young professionals network and other things like that. So plugging in is not that hard and networking is just hanging out with people. So it's, the buzzword's great, but the reality is you just get to know people.
Yeah, I think it's building relationships. And I know a lot of people are introverted and that seems a little bit more difficult or they're awkward. Millennials, we tend to be a little bit more awkward, but I think just going into it where you're not expecting anything. Right. I think it's like they're not going to give you the shirt off their back.
That's right.
Expecting to get something. You need to be going into it with giving.
How can I learn?
Yeah. It's like, how can I learn? How can I help you? It's not about me. How can I give to you? And I think that's big because our kind of culture is me.
Right. And that's the difference too. They equate sometimes. Sometimes we get equated as real estate agents or realtors to car salesmen.
Yeah.
And that's not a ding on a car salesman, but a lot of times it can feel pressury
Yeah.
and pushy. And so that's how we train agents at our brokerage and our team especially, is that just bring value. Bring value. And so if you're willing to do the things, if someone doesn't want to buy or isn't ready to buy, help them find a rental if they need it. Because the fact is, you're just helping people. And if you love what you do and you help people, then it all falls into place. So it's really not about what can you do for me? It's what can I do for you? And in the end, people remember that.
And I think that's what sales is about, serving people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, oh, I've closed the deal. I got the whale. It's like, for you, it's like, I got to get this home for this awesome family and they're going to love it. And they're going to be there for years. I think that is such a nice way of living life, is that you're serving others.
It is. And to watch those things unfold, all different circumstances, all different. Some people have lost their parents and have to sell their home. Some people are getting a divorce and it's hard. Some people are buying their first house and you get to celebrate with them. Some people are moving with the military or coming here to be stationed here. And so being able to be a part of all those things, you're a part of someone's life.
Yeah.
And I joke about that whole transaction when you meet them and know them, if they're new clients of yours, that you talk all the time. It's like having a bestie.
Yeah.
And then it's almost sad when the closing happens, because then your relationship you don't talk as much.
Yeah.
So that's why we do a lot with our clients that have already bought or sold. So we still have events and parties and things for them to come to, because I feel like I still want my people around.
Yeah, because you've built that relationship. You don't want to be like, all right, and now we've got the money by. Like,
right. That's not it, because I cared more about the people than the money. So it's just a great way to love what you do.
So my question to you is, why Levin Rinke? Why did you choose that? There's tons of other realtors within Pensacola, but why did you choose to be a part of Levin Rinke?
Okay, so I did not start with Levin Rinke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we were at a different brokerage, which we loved, absolutely loved the people. It wasn't I got to get out of here. It was fabulous. And but then Levin Rinke came calling and asking and wooing, and we were able to see what they offered. And it wasn't monetary type offering, but it was a support type offering. It was a collaborative, professional environment that we really felt like was worth it.
Yeah.
And so we moved to to Levin Rinke, and have not looked back. I mean, it has been fabulous. Now, we know Levin Rinke is the number one brokerage in the area and all the things, and, the great buzzwords and the numbers, right? They speak for themselves. But to me, Levin Rinke isn't about that. Last year, we had the first 1 billion sales.
That's awesome.
I mean, it is awesome. It is so cool. But again, it's not about that. To me, it's my day-to-day. What does it mean to be part of a group that cares about each other?
Yeah.
That I can call any agent in the brokerage and they're willing to help. They're willing to look over something. If I go, let's look at these numbers again, I'm not so sure, whatever it is, people are there. And that's what I want to be for them too. And so Levin Rinke to me is about the support. It really is. They care about their agents. And pretty much anything we ask for support, we get. So it's a big deal.
Not just in real estate. Like, I've worked with a few realtors doing videos and all of that, but within different companies, the culture, it's like they say, oh, we're here to support. And then when you ask, it's like,
crickets.
Yeah. And like, talk a little bit about that. Like, how has that helped you get into where you are now? And how are you helping others? Because I know someone that just started with Levin Rinke, and it's like seeing her journey and everything. It's really interesting how all of that works.
It is such a collaborative space for us. That no one agent is the rock star and everybody else is just around. With Levin Rinke, though, they take it so seriously that we want to be the expert in the market, that we spend a lot of time training. We have trainings. I mean, our training schedule is insane. If you can go to anything you want to go to, Tuesdays, we have full brokerage trainings. And then there's all kinds of pocket trainings that you can go to. But we have a 12-week success course that we train new agents on anything. I mean, everything you can think of, contracts to listings to software that we use and other things like that. We have a video series that's a 12-week video series for training when people start.
Yeah.
But Levin Rinke takes it so seriously that we are going to be the best agents out there, that if you're a new agent, we require you to be part of a mentor program. So you don't get to just let it fly.
Yeah.
That's not how we roll. And so you have to go through a mentorship program for your first 4 transactions, which means an experienced agent that's part of the mentor program comes alongside you, helps you learn the business, walks through transactions with you. And once you're successful with those 4, then you get to go on your own. But it is such a big deal to us to have experience that matters and that people are educated and they are the experts.
Y'all set yourselves up as like the preeminent realtor in the area. And when these new realtors are coming in, you want the brand identity not to tank. And you also care about them because you want them to be successful. I love that, because so many places just throw you into a position and like, all right, here's the SOPs.
That's right.
Have fun.
And we are not about diluting the brand. It is a standard that it's a gold standard that we expect. And we do the same on our team.
Yeah.
The brokerage structure is that you're your own business, but you're under the brokerage. And our team is the same way. We have our own SOPs. We have our own training. We have our own mentorship that we require as well. So again, it's a standard. It's a brand identity that if someone says if a Levin Rinke agent calls, then you can expect a certain level of service.
I love that. So let's move into some like general questions, because I haven't ever bought a home. I know Nick has bought a home with you. What are some commonly unexpected challenges that home buyers face? Like what are some things that just come out of left field and smack them right in the face?
I just had this conversation today with a brand new buyer who reached out. And so we had the initial consultation. And those are the things that I like to talk about, because brand new buyers don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I want a house. Here's the price. That's not it.
Yeah.
So when you look at the price, that's great, but there are so many things that come into play. And so we walked through other costs associated with buying. And to me, that's probably the biggest thing. A lot of people look on Zillow, do or whatever website you go to. But there are lots of them out there.
Yeah.
But then they'll look at mortgage calculations and like, oh, I could afford the payment. Let's go. And so there's so much more, because there's a deposit. Do you have the cash for that? There are inspections. Do you have the cash for that? Do you have a cash to pay outside of the lender or the contract to pay for an appraisal? Moving costs are outrageous. So people don't take the deposits that you may need on electricity or those other things, the water bill. So all of those things come into play. And so plus the down payment. So it can get expensive, and we need to look at that ahead of time, because you don't want to get halfway through the process and go, oh, but I didn't know I needed $10,000 to do this. And so it really is education. That all goes back to that, and really setting people up for expectation management as we go through the process.
It's almost like buying a car. I know you kind of already, equated, realtors to car salesmen, but that out the door price instead of the monthly payment. So many people are concerned about that, but it's like, well, what are all these other charges? And we're so focused on the website number and everything, and that's just a listing price that isn't what you're walking out.
Things, right? And also realizing that your mortgage, your lender has fees too. And so you can shop around for those fees, and it's hard to get apples to apples with lenders.
Yeah.
But make calls, have conversations, because you may totally click with a lender that you like. You may not. You could just go online and find a lender, which you may not be able to talk to anybody. If that's your jam of being totally electronic and doing it, then that's fine. But we have a lot of local lenders that will sit down, educate, talk through things, and say, okay, if you're not ready to buy right now, here's the process to get there.
Yeah.
And to me, that education piece is why I love some of our local lenders, because they'll help you get there.
I think that goes to the next part of this is, what are some things that has cost people money that they could avoid? Like something that they walk into, and because they were uneducated and not because of the realtor, but it could be various things. Like, where are some ways that they can avoid, like, dimes, nickels, and so forth?
Not doing an inspection. Because
Okay.
everything looks great. And then if they don't do an inspection, then they may have issues down the way. And that goes for new construction too. Some people think, oh, it's new construction, I don't need to do an inspection. But you may need to and it's cheaper to do a new construction home inspection because obviously it's all new. But they have found things that have cost people later. And so an inspection, just do your due diligence. It's worth it. We joke about one marshmallow now versus waiting for 2 marshmallows with our kids when we were growing up. To say, okay, do we have the self-control to wait for something? Not, oh, I love it, let's do it. And so having the ability to do your due diligence, going through the process, uncovering some of those things, and walking away if it's not the right house. Because sometimes it just isn't the right time or the right house, and that's okay.
I think that's big to understand. It's like there's other houses out there.
There are.
And just because you've set your heart on it doesn't mean you can buy it. But what's going to happen in 5 years? Are you going to be happy, or are you going to be like, I should have passed on this?
Right. And those conversations we do have, and it really depends on the buyer, because a military buyer may need something different. They need to have something that is rentable. Easily rentable or easily sellable for them if they have to leave in 2 years. So that looks like a different house than someone who may want the kind of eclectic, eccentric type house that they, want a pond in the middle of the living room kind of thing. Well, that's not going to be your turnkey type home that a military buyer might need. It could be that you want to live next to your grandmother. Well, when that house pops up, you may have to be okay with some of the weird things that, or overlook some of those things. So it really just depends on who the buyer is, because a house fits the buyer. There's not one size fits all.
Being a band person, it's like when you play an instrument, you don't fit you don't contort yourself to the instrument. You make the instrument fit you. And that's the same thing with houses. I do have a quick question though. So let's say an inspector finds something wrong with the house, mold, whatever. How is that addressed? Because again, I've never bought a house. I've only rented. So how is that addressed? Is that something like, hey, we found this, if you fix it, blah, blah, blah? Like, tell me a little bit about how that process works.
So we go by contracts, right? Everything is black and white. We don't assume anything. We don't, it is all black and white. And there's a process to that. And so usually there's some sort of repair limit that a seller has put on that, like we're willing to do however much. And then once you get your inspections back, then you get to decide what's important to you. So if there's something major, you might want to walk away if it's allowed within the contract, depending on how you wrote the contract. But if there are repairs that you want done, you put in a repair request. And then there's this many days for that, and someone has to respond within so many days. And so depending on the type of contract you use. But then if a seller is willing to repair those items, full steam ahead. Everybody's happy. But if they're not, then you decide, is it something that I want to put my money into, or is it something that is going to be a deal breaker? Because some things like mold, which I say is the 4-letter word, literally and figuratively, but that's a real thing. And people throw the word mold around as a side note when they really probably mean mildew. There's a lot of that. And they're like, we see mold. No, mold is a real thing that has to be taken care of by experts. So we don't like to throw that word around.
I've put the taboo word out there.
That's right. Because it's a red flag word. I mean, it's a big deal. So,
definitely.
It can be remedied. So it's not the kiss of death, but mold can be a big deal. And so everybody is looking for those big deal breaker items that are concerning, or big money items that can be concerning. And so, buyers are on a budget typically. And so we want to be sure that we're doing the best by them.
So what are the top 3 things you look at for a client buying a house? Like, what are the first 3 things like on your checklist for them? Or does it vary?
It does.
Depending on the client.
It does. Okay. I mean, some are similar. Budget, obviously. If you say, I want a $300,000 house, I'll go, let's go look at these $1 million houses on the beach. That's really not the best agent, right? So you want to make sure you're meeting their needs and what they need. And the only way to know that is to ask. And so what you think you might want or need I'm not the agent that you say $300,000 and I go, ooh, but let's push it to 350.
Yeah.
I'm not that girl. But have you thought about this? And if we went to this house and asked for help with closing costs or down payment kind of thing, could you do that if that was your dream home? And so do you need a garage? What are your hobbies? Do you want to be by your hobbies? If you love the beach, are you okay with a 45-minute drive? Or do we need to go with something much smaller for your budget to get you near your recreation?
Yeah.
And so do you want to be near work? Do you want to be near fun? Do you want, hopefully they're one and the same, right? For people. But, so what do you need where, a brand new family might need something that has a yard for their dog. We already talked about military. They may have needs to not buy the crazy one-off house that someone else might love.
Yeah.
But, again, if you have to take care of your parents, you want to be in the same neighborhood, well, then we wait for something to come up there. But really, it's budget, wants, and needs, and how we can make those happen. Could we add a shop if you need a shop? Could we add a pool if a pool is the necessity? Like, is this the best house? I love it, but it doesn't have a pool. We can fix that. You can buy a pool and put one in. So there's some things that you can't change. You can't change your land. You can't change where you are. You can paint the room. You can add a new kitchen. You can do things like that. But the things that you can't change, I try to really focus on to fit what a buyer wants and needs.
So this just popped in my head. What's the weirdest deal breaker that you've had to deal with?
Well, I hate to even say it, because it was so strange. But we made it and we sold it. But a buyer and a seller during a final walkthrough had it out. And the buyer walked away and refused. We were going to closing.
Oh, wow.
To closing. And they just left. So it was rough. It was tough. And so we put the house back on the market and got it sold. But that was a hard day.
Yeah.
It was a hard day for everybody because it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But it did. And so there wasn't any way you could put those words back in.
Yeah.
So it was, I got my feelings hurt and left. Not me, but, the buyer got their feelings hurt and left. And that was that.
Oof.
Yeah.
So talking about selling houses, how can sellers make the most out of their property?
Prep your house. Now, this is not 2-3 years ago when it didn't matter. You could leave your dirty laundry out. You could be sleeping and, it didn't matter. And someone would come in and say, I want it.
Yeah.
That's not the day that we have now. And so we have a lot of inventory. So buyers have a choice. And so getting your house ready for the market is a big deal. And that doesn't cost a lot of money, but it does take time. And so being able to declutter is a big, big thing. Buyers need to see themselves in the house. Yeah. And so we have a stager that we pay for to come to houses, not to bring things in, but to look at it, to help you declutter so that it lands the best online with photos. And so that's the big deal. Most people shop in their pajamas, FYI. Pro tip, they do. And so you have to be sure that you're presenting yourself online correctly, because that's where most people shop first before they ever step in the door. But really the prep, it's decluttering, painting, touch-ups, making it as neutral as possible, because if a buyer walks in and sees all your stuff, they can't see their stuff in there. So really making it attractive in that sense. Curb appeal. How many times have I seen an appointment scheduled because they saw the pictures online and then it gets canceled the day before, or we cancel it? If I have the buyer, they said, oh, we drove through the neighborhood and it didn't look good. So you've got to be sure that you're ready for that. People are driving by.
Oh, yeah.
And so making sure they want to come in. So that's a big deal.
I shot real estate photos for a while. So going into...
You've seen it all.
You go in and you're like, what were they thinking?
They knew we were coming, right?
Yeah. It's like, okay. And but there were others where they made it where it was neutral, and the people that were viewing were the hero of the story, not the current owners that are trying to sell. And I think that's really important to understand.
It is. And that is a big deal. And I don't think people realize how much it can help, that even that coat of paint is just money in the bank, because the return on that, and I'm not saying redo your whole kitchen for $40,000.
Yeah.
but paint a wall or two that's scuffed up from your kids. Like my house, hit the light switch and it's dirty there,
Yeah.
because everybody hits the light switch the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
Touch it up, clean it up. Clean, clean, clean. And then we tell sellers, and then clean again. Because people look at your baseboards. It's not the typical dinner party where you think, oh, people are going to look at it. No, buyers do. They actually do.
Yeah.
So do the work.
Yeah. If there's a little cobweb up there, take care of it. Whatever you need to do.
The other tip, air filter. Change the air filter.
That's an easy one, but it's overlooked.
It is.
I love that.
Yes.
So how can sellers, how can they get the best deal for their home? So let's say they're wanting to increase the value of their home. How can they go about, it might be a smaller project, it might be a larger one.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you are like, this is the best bang for your buck?
Countertops, and they don't have to be expensive, but just new countertops, new paint is a big deal. And really, it's just the work. Like we talked about, the curb appeal. It doesn't have to be a total reno. It really doesn't, because you can have an older bathroom and make it look nice. You can clean that thing where it is just spotless. And so then it becomes vintage at that point. It doesn't have to be redone if you present it in the right light.
So you're saying curb appeal a few times here, and I just want to hit that. What are some things that you would, you pulled up into a yard and you're selling this house, you'd be like, oh, this. What are like 3 things that you would fix automatically?
Pressure washing. Easy to do, but we live in a very wet area. So most people pressure wash twice a year. And so doing it right before you go on the market, mulch or however, pine straw, whatever you choose to use, and de-weed your flower bed. We tell sellers all the time that the front porch is the longest anyone is going to stand there, because an agent is typically getting the key out of the lockbox. They're standing there waiting for the agent to get the key out of the lockbox, and they're looking at everything. So we say, stand on your front porch and just look, because that's exactly what a buyer is seeing. And that's the longest they're going to stand there, because they're waiting on someone else. And so making sure that your front porch is ready to go.
I love that, because it's actionable. And it's not that much of a investment. It's just, again, the little things.
That's right.
You're not, putting in a new pool, which you could. You could, but you're doing small things to boost the value, because when people are trying to buy something, they're going to try to find every little thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
and a buyer, when they go through a house, in our experience that we've seen, and there's no real statistics on this, it's just what we see, that a buyer will go through a house, and when they say, oh, we'll just give a credit for that carpet, or oh, we'll just give a paint credit. But a buyer walks through, and that's money that's just ticking off in their head. And the value of that, we say wallpaper. A buyer's going to go, oh, that's $10,000. It is not $10,000. But to them, I can take money off, because I'm going to have to do that, and I'm going to have to do that, and I'm going to have to do that. So automatically, the buyer is starting at a price that's lower than your list price.
Yeah.
And so just like everything in life, it's the little things. If you get the little things right, the big things come. And so we say the same thing with a seller.
Well, and it's like if you're a buyer, it really depends on the personality as well.
Sure.
Because some people like to fix things. They like to, make it their own. But others, it's like, oh, I've got a full-time job. My wife has a full-time job. We've got 3 kids. We just need a bigger house, and we need it now. And they're not wanting to worry about, oh, well, I got to paint this room, and I got to make sure that this is safe because I've got a baby and all of that. They just want it ready to move in. And I think knowing that as a seller would be, huge, because you're in your own world, when you're living your life and you're like, oh, well, my house looks great, but it's fresh eyes. It's your perspective is skewed.
Right. And a great story about that is that my business partner, our team leader, she was selling her own home. And so she actually had our stager come in and and she thought she had done everything that we typically do. And the stager came in and said, what's the stack? And it was a stack of papers on the counter that lived there forever. Like we all have that, right? And she said, I don't even notice it anymore, because it's just your life.
Yeah.
That's what you have in your house. I have stacks too. And so, but fresh eyes come into that and see it, and a buyer would see it too. So they made those changes. And she said, I don't even notice some of those things in our own house because that's how we live.
Yeah.
And how you live and how you sell are two totally different things.
I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. So let's talk about some financing options here.
Okay.
We've got, rate buy downs, builder deals. What should buyers watch for when they're hunting for a new home?
So the interesting part is because of the incentives that builders are giving with rate buy downs, that tends to be the competition with a
Yep.
lot of price points in our market. Not all have new construction competition, but a lot do in that middle pocket that we see a lot of buyers and sellers. So for rate buy down, a buyer may say, "Oh, this house is $300,000. I want to offer $280." Well, I say offer $300,000 and ask the seller for $15,000 rate buy down. That's going to save you probably $400 a month, but that 20 grand difference in the purchase price isn't that big of a deal on your mortgage payment. So the rate buy down is the secret sauce. And there are lots of lenders out there that do them. It's not just one or two. You can buy points all the time. And so asking that seller, and that's the biggest bang for a buyer's buck, is to, even if you pay a higher price, but asking for those closing costs to help with rate buy down or towards your closing costs, because then it's less cash out of your pocket. But getting creative, I think, is the biggest thing that an agent can do to serve their client, because trying to figure out what's best for them. And that's where those professional relationships come in. I'm talking to our buyers lenders to say, hey, what do we need? How can we get them there? How can I negotiate on their behalf and ask for things that a lender can plug and play? And so I think those business relationships help a lot. If you've got an online lender, that's hard to do, but there's a market for that too. But I think those relationships come in handy because it's a phone call. It's like, hey, let's help this Mr. or Mrs. Buyer get what they need. And so we can be creative in that.
Like you said, it's the relationship. I do want to ask, what on the seller side, what's best for them? Like for a buyer, it might be good, but what should a seller be looking out for, when they're doing this?
And the same. I mean, really it is, because to get buyers, you need to be as marketable as possible. And so some of our sellers have already offered rate buy downs to compete with new construction. And so they can offer things to a buyer like some closing cost or things like that. So we tell sellers in this market to expect some sort of negotiation because not many people are paying list price right now. In some price points they are. And if it's the one house that's available in East Hill, maybe they are, for those desirable areas too, that they don't have a lot to pick from. We've got a lot of inventory in a lot of our markets. And I say markets like micro markets around Pensacola. And so a lot of inventory, buyers have choices. And so to be the best at what you, as a choice, you want your sellers to be there too.
That's interesting because it was a seller's market.
Oh, yes.
And it was cutthroat.
Crazy.
Almost. And now we're having that buyer's market, which, it's going to flip and flop as we go and everything.
And I feel like we're more balanced. In that market, it was nuts. But the buyers really had zero power. And I felt bad for them. I mean, you had to like sell your firstborn, put it with the offer. So, I mean, it was rough for them. And you had to make a decision in 6 seconds.
Yes.
Where now they had a lot of buyer's remorse. At the time, it was just like, I got to have it. Where now you take your time. You have time to look. But I think it's more balanced and fair now. I really do. Even though our interest rates are a little high. But, it is what it is. And we have to deal with what we've got. And people still have to buy and sell. So here we are.
True. So let's jump into a few fun questions here. What is the most expensive house, if you feel comfortable saying it, what is the most expensive house you've ever sold?
Now, I don't work a lot at the beach, so those houses are a little more expensive. Our price pocket, our average price point for us is around $400. So for us, or for me personally, the others on our team have more expensive homes too. I've sold $1.5 million house, which was gorgeous. It was off Chantarine down by the country club, and it was fabulous. Really nice.
That is so cool. I gotta ask as well, what's the quirkiest house or like a fixture or something
yeah.
in a house that you have either seen or sold to somebody?
Both of them I have sold. Well, one I've sold, one we had on the market and it didn't end up selling with us. One was an actual pole barn, like the old style telephone pole, like what
Yeah.
we used to call pole barns, not what we see now. With the,
Barnuminiums.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the seller had kind of do it yourself and had closed it all in. And it was strange. We found a buyer that loved it and we couldn't get financing on it because it had so many quirky parts to it. But the buyer loved it and they ended up, living there and enjoying it. So, everything is sellable. It's just at what price and finding the right buyer. So it's like a matchmaking service, right? So getting it done.
I like the matchmaking side.
The weirdest feature, I think, which is kind of cool, but it had a pond in the living room. Literally.
You mentioned that?
Yes.
I was going to go back to it.
Yes.
Was it like a koi pond or?
It could have been. They had turtles.
Okay.
And then a couple buyers that saw it thought they could put a lot of plants in there, but it was interesting to have just a big I've seen a small fountain, but a big water feature. That was probably larger than a dining room table. I mean, it was large. So interesting. Beautiful home. Beautiful home.
Now I want to see that just to get my eyes on it. So let's move into some Pensacola questions here. So like you said, the market is changing. It's growing. There's different pockets throughout the rest of Pensacola. What are some areas that if people are looking to buy that they should be keeping their eyes on?
East Hill continues to be popular. It is such a neat area.
It is.
With all the parks close to the water. But the price point leaves some people out.
Yeah.
Because East Hill is growing, and so the prices per square foot there tend to be on the high side, which is awesome for people that want to live there. But for me, the growing areas that we see just by sheer volume is going to be Cantonment, Beulah, and then Pace and Milton because they have land to build on. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the new construction. Interestingly, Levin Rinke, we dig a lot into numbers because we're the market experts, right? Yep. So digging into numbers is our jam. And looking at those, we look at percentages of resales versus new construction. And so you can tell a lot by that as to where things are growing. And it's interesting, most zip codes have maybe 70%, 80% resales. But those two markets I just mentioned, Cantonment, Pace, Milton, you're down into like the 50 and the 40%, which tells you that half of that is new construction sales.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on in those areas that where we're growing. I mean, anybody that drives 9 Mile Road knows it.
Yes.
They feel it. They could tell you that without a real estate license. But seeing the growth is exciting. But at the same time, it's a lot of competition for resale. So you just have to be strategic in what you do and the conversations you have with sellers.
Yeah, like Shabaka Highway. Oh, my gosh. It feels like you have to fight people with a stick to get to the red light.
But we live in such a great area. And we're insulated from a lot of the other market pressures that other markets are around the country because we've got the military, we've got Navy Federal, we've got a lot of hospitals. And so people always need to buy and sell, and we just want them to make the best choice for them.
Because Pensacola, I feel like, is running out of land. So that's why we're like moving into more of the, north end of Pace and into
Give me all your farmland.
Yeah.
Farmers don't like that.
No, they don't. But it's just really interesting to see what is up and coming and everything within that. But I want to jump ahead to the next 5-10 years. What should the real estate, or what will the real estate landscape look like? Are we going to see more townhouses? I feel like we're seeing tons of townhouses downtown. And then are we going to see more multifamily complexes? Like, what do you think is, since y'all
my crystal ball? Did I bring my crystal ball?
Y'all said y'all do numbers.
That's right. Not the future numbers. No. But we are seeing a lot of apartments come online here. The I-10 Pine Forest Road corridor Denver is just exploding over there with apartments. We are seeing some townhomes pop up around the area. We don't have a lot of multifamily, and I think that's what we're lacking. You know, a
Okay.
lot of cities have lots of duplexes and things like that, so quadplexes. We don't have a lot of that. And so, you know, a lot of our investors and buyers are like, "Oh, I want a duplex. I want a quadplex." I'm like, "Let me look at the 12 we have." No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. There's more than that. But it really is. I think that I'd love to see more of that. You know, the multifamily units, not necessarily apartments.
Yeah.
But there's a market for that. There's a need for that. And people always say, you know, don't rent. You need to buy. Some people need to rent.
Yeah.
It is okay to rent until you're ready to buy.
Yeah.
And so don't fall into that trap that all you can do is buy real estate. You know, it is a wealth builder, but there is a time to rent also. And so, you know, you want to do what's best for people. And if that's the best thing, then it's the best thing. But I do feel like if we could get some more multifamily duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, that could be a great addition to our market.
Yep. I feel like apartments, they've got their own vibe and everything. You know, a lot more people, but the duplexes, triplexes, like it feels a little bit more communal than, you know, your larger apartment complexes and everything.
For community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So let's jump into one, and I kind of want to know your thoughts on this. Is there's a lot of realtors in Pensacola. Like I've got like 5 like right on the top of my head. Why should home buyers or sellers work with Levin Rinke?
Well, you need to
You're
pick.
biased, I know, but
I am, of course. But there are great realtors in other brokerages too. It's not that you have to be a Levin Rinke agent to, you know, of course, I feel like we are the market expert. We're the leaders in the market. But there are a lot of realtors. And everybody, like you said, you know several. I bet everybody could name probably 5 offhand, just friends or friends of friend or a neighbor or my sister or whoever. And so to me, it's about experience. You need to go with someone who is a professional, full-time realtor. You would not put, or I would not put, my largest asset in the hands of someone who's like, I'm going to try this out. To me, that's not the answer. And so I'm looking for the market expert. I want the best doctor. I want the best teacher. I want someone who cares about their profession enough that they're willing to do it full time, go all in, and have the experience to back it up. And to me, the experience in negotiations, that's where you win or lose a deal. And so having someone who has a track record of that is who I would pick. And I would submit that Levin Rinke has a lot of those agents. But there are other brokerages that have rock star agents that I love working with. But Levin Rinke to me is the cream of the crop because not just the name. It doesn't name and the sign, whatever, but it's about the culture and about what they stand for. And so very involved in the community. It's just we're homegrown. That's, you know, we're here for that.
Well, and it goes back to the training that you talked about before. It's you're not getting someone that's just got their license, you know, and then just whatever. They're with someone experienced and taking them along, having teams. I think that's really important, you know, because I think about a surgeon.
Right.
You know,
do you want to be there first? For the surgery?
You know, it's
everybody has to start somewhere. And that's the other piece of the mentorship program is because we know everybody has to start somewhere, but let us help you. Let us help you get there.
So let's jump into some advice. We already kind of hit it with some training stuff and everything, but advice for aspiring realtors. I want to pick your brain here. Okay. So what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's wanting to be a realtor?
Yes. Keep learning. You don't get your license and you're done. Keep learning. I love to learn. So I feel like lifelong learning is one of those things that just, you're never going to know it all. It's not like you say, okay, I've got 2 years in and now I'm it. You know, I'm done. There is always something changing. Our market, look at the market even over the last few years. If we sat in 2021 or 2022 and then you sit in this market, it's like a different job.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely different profession because of the status of the market.
Mm.
And so you always have to be evolving and pivoting is what we like to say, because you've got to change with the market and respond to it. It's like, I used to do it this way. Well, great. But now we don't. If you would have told me when I started real estate that we would sell homes on social media, I would have told you were crazy.
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts. Nobody's going to do that. Everybody does that.
Yeah.
Now, so you have to change with the market. Now, the tried and true, take care of people, learn your craft, know the market is still applicable here. But you have to pivot with the market. And you're never going to get to a place where you're like, I've seen it all. I've seen a lot. I've seen some crazy stuff. I've not seen it all. So I'm not surprised when something else comes down.
Yeah. And it's just growing with the ever-changing world, because social media has thrown things left and right.
That's
and it's the way people engage with each other now. Like being a millennial, I'll out us here on this. We don't like phone calls, but we'll text. We'll text all day long.
That's right.
But it's figuring out how people tick. Different generations work different ways. It's like, older people aren't going to be like, oh yeah, I saw it on Zillow or whatever.
That's right.
It's like,
I called the sign.
I saw it on my drive.
Right. Because even when we sit down with people, I say, how do you want to be communicated with? Because some people love to text. Some people want a phone call.
Yeah.
Some people say, don't send me a document to sign on the computer. You need to print it off and bring it to my house. I got you.
Yeah.
That's, we're going to meet the need and have expectation management with that client. We just had a conference we went to with a presenter, and he said he saw a person that he had presented to, and he goes, I've been emailing you for weeks. He's like, I'm not reading your email. Did you DM me? And he DM'd him and he answered him right then.
Wow.
Because he goes, I don't answer my emails. So finding out what works for someone is how you're going to communicate. And so, like you said, change with the times.
So what would be one thing that you would, they just got their realtor license and they're about to start selling their first house, and they might not have the infrastructure that y'all have. What would be something that to set them up for success on this first sale? What would you guide them on that? They might know the law.
Right,
Let's just assume that side of
I
things.
hope so.
Yeah. But what would be something like, hey, definitely check this?
Know your contract. Know what you're signing your client up for. Find a mentor. Even if it's not in an official mentor program, find a mentor. Call me. I'm fine to help all agents. I love it when newer agents call me and ask questions. I ask questions of more experienced agents than me. So you're never at the top of the pinnacle there. You don't know everything. And so being humble enough to ask questions, but the thing that will get you in the most trouble is to not know your contract. And so you need to know what you're signing folks up for. And be able to explain it to someone, because you need to know your contract. Black and white. That's all there is.
So if you had to go back in time to when you started,
yes,
what would be something that you changed? It might be the contract, but it might be something else. What would you change? If you had to start over, everything's gone.
Right.
You're back at the beginning.
Get organized faster. Because if you have one buyer or one seller, it's easy to think that you've figured it out. But then when you have 10, 15, 20 buyers and sellers at the same time, the juggle, to be sure that you're organized faster. And my systems have evolved over time. Checklists have evolved over time. But in the beginning, I wish I would have gone to someone and said, hey, give me your checklist. Because then I could have just tweaked that instead of having to create our own over time.
Yeah, so reinventing.
Get organized faster.
Okay. Yep. I love that. I feel like that and time management gets, I know how to manage my time.
That's right. No, you don't. If it's not on your calendar, you're not going to do it. Block your time. Yep.
That's something that I'm working on personally right now.
It will change your life. It will change your life because I block out time to do nothing. The time that you block, you'll do.
Yeah.
And so then when you're doing the other things, you don't feel bad about it. Because I know everything else is covered. Yeah. So if I go to lunch with a friend, I've blocked out that time. I don't feel bad. I'm not rushed at it or anything. That you've blocked out time to work. Now block out time to do things for you too.
That is a life hack right there.
That
is a life hack. So before we get into the end,
okay,
how do you fire a difficult client? Could be seller, could be buyer. How do you say, it's been nice working with you, but
Mhm.
I think we're going to need to part ways.
I've only done it a couple times because it got to a point where there was a lot of disrespect. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's my big deal. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to work together. We're on the same team. But I think that happens sometimes when you don't set expectation in the beginning. Like, this is how it's going to go. And not that I run it all, because I'm going to respond to how you need me there. But I think setting expectation, this is when you'll hear from me once a week at the minimum. We may talk other times, but you're still going to hear from me.
Yeah.
And so what that expectation is for both of us. And so is that enough for you? We have clients that want to talk 3 times a week. Okay. As long as we're setting that ahead of time. But I think frustration where you get to that point is an unmet expectation. And so if I confront that in the beginning, then everything is much better. So, and again, I say to new agents that we train, it's just like any relationship. If I don't talk to you for 3 months and then we come together to have a conversation, we don't have a lot to talk about because there's been a lot of distance between us. And if it's a hard conversation, that's even harder. But if I've talked to you every day and we have a bump in the transaction, I'm like, oh, hey, this happened. We got it figured out. Here's the solution. We've talked all the time. So it's like, oh, Ashley's got it.
Yeah.
But if I just am a ghost, then I show up on the scene with a problem, then that becomes a bigger issue in a relationship.
Yeah. They want to get the Ghostbusters out.
That's right.
So I think that's very interesting because being transparent, building that relationship, that rapport, you're going to be able to navigate the choppier waters and the smooth sailing.
For sure.
So how do you fire them, though?
We have had a conversation with one client in particular that I can remember, and we had several leading up to it. I said, I just don't think we're on the same page. I think someone else might be able to serve you better than I do, because it just got to the point with it just wasn't going to work. So it's just a point of, hey, I think we're at the end here. I think we need to go our separate ways and you to find a different agent to fill your needs because this isn't working. So it's not a terrible conversation. It's not a shouting match or anything. I think at that point, the writing's on the wall. But like I said, it's not happened very often. So that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. And again, you're wanting to serve them. And at that point, you don't feel like it's serving either
of
side.
us. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So last section, these are some rapid fire questions. These are the fun ones. First, would you rather have a taco or a grilled cheese made specifically and exactly to your specification? Taco
all day.
Okay.
No question.
What is on your taco? I need to know.
Can I tell you a business that makes it just like I want it?
Sure.
El Asador.
Okay.
Yep. Steak, taco supreme, flour tortilla. Excellent. Yes.
Okay.
I'll eat other tacos, though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But, that's the best.
I'm going to have to try that then.
Oh. You've not been there?
No, I've never been there.
Come on now.
I've never been there.
Okay.
I'm a La Hacienda stan. So
let's go.
I'm a La Hacienda stan. So what would your memoir be called?
So interestingly, I started asking my kids and my husband about this question because I was tipped off to it. And they said, what did they say? Loving a lifetime of learning. How campy is that? But it's true because I would just go to school if I could.
Yeah.
I really would. I would stay in school my whole life.
See, I'm the nerdy kind of person that I watch tutorials on things and just I'm the same way. I just want to learn more stuff.
When I was in college, I thought, why would people come to school and just to take classes and not get a grade or anything?
Yeah.
Now I'm that person that I would go. So I go, I get it now. Then I did 20, I did not get it, but I get it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So what is your favorite fast food fry? You got all these amazing ones. What's your favorite?
Five Guys.
Five Guys. Okay.
Real fries, real potatoes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I got to ask, regular or the Cajun?
I like the regular, but I like the Cajun.
Okay.
My kids like the Cajun, but regular for me.
Condiment of choice with your fry.
Oh, ketchup. Normal.
Okay.
Normal.
All right.
Stay in the lane.
Yeah.
Yes.
People that mustard. And I'm like, who are
and
you?
Malt vinegar, all this. No.
Yeah. I
no.
Like, ketchup. That's all you need. That's all you need.
Name brand ketchup, by the way.
Yes.
Name brand ketchup.
Yes. What is One book you think everyone should read.
The Bible.
Okay. Why?
Because it is the instruction for life.
Mhm.
Every part of your life can
Yeah.
be addressed. Now, you could read a book on speaking. You could read a book on management. You could read a book on lots of things. The Bible's going to give you everything you need to know.
True.
And it absolutely changed. I'd studied and read and all the things until I read it cover to cover 4 years ago. I've studied it for years, 20 years. But until I read it cover to cover, it didn't have the impact that it does now.
Okay.
Totally worth it.
I like that because it does. It changes your whole perspective on life, relationships, love, worry.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing. So, Ashley, thank you so much for being on here.
Pleasure.
I'm glad that you are here and shared all your expertise. Now I know who to come to when I'm ready to buy a house.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Thank you.
So, Ashley, how can people find you if they're wanting to follow you on social media or buy a house or sell a house? How can they find you?
Google Ashley Murray Realtor in Pensacola, Levin Rinke, the Kathy Batterton team.
Boom. Well,
That's where it is.
There you have it, everybody. This has been Building Pensacola. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and all of those good things. We're available on podcast services around the globe. And we'll see you next time.